All right, so before we get started, here's what you're going to need tool-wise for it to complete the kit. You're going to need needle nose pliers, an X-Acto knife, 7mm, 5.5mm nut drivers, 2.5 and 2.0mm hex drives. I've opted to use a Hitachi electric drill with the bits. If you're going to use this, I would recommend settings on 3 or 4 to start. We don't want to strip any plastics out, so I'd recommend doing that. And I've also got my calipers to measure my turnbuckles. Now in your kit, you're going to included will be a setup guide that will give you the lengths of each turnbuckle. So that'll be fairly easy. You'll just be able to match them right up to what's on the sheet. It'll be simple and straightforward. Let's get to it. Okay, so I'm going to work with the front end first, and I'm going to actually pull the whole front end off. I just think it's a little easier, a little cleaner to work on. You may have your own way of doing things, but I'll show you how I do it. First, take my 5.5 nut driver. I'm just unthreading the outsides of each turnbuckle, the steering turnbuckle, the left and the right. This allows me to pull everything off at once. Here are my 2.5 here. All right. Go ahead and flip this over. Get all the ones on the bottom here that connect my front bulkhead here to the rear skid plate and steering carrier. Well, I'll do my front skid plate. I'm going to switch out to my 2mm, flip it back over, undo my top 2mm screws that are attaching the front skid plate support. And that reveals our two 2.5mm screws, so we'll switch back. And now we should be able to lift our tie rods off, and this whole front end should come right off. So pretty simple. Now I have a nice easy access area to get to my arms, pull my shocks off, and pull off the shock tower. My 2.5mm on my drill here, and I'm just going to start by removing the body mount. Go ahead and let's go ahead and keep these screws so I know which holes I was using. Put that off to the side. Undo both my camber link tie rods. Set that aside. I'm going to undo, since I got my 2.5mm in here, I'm going to go ahead and undo the top of my shocks. There's little washers behind there, so we'll make sure we don't want to lose those. Those washers are important because if you don't use them, see, I'm already looking for my other washer here. There it is. If you don't use those washers, what's going to happen is the screw that holds the top of the shock in is actually going to collapse the plastic here and make it really stiff. So we want to make sure and keep that as free as possible. Switch out to my 2mm. Take it off the bottom of my arms. Pretty straightforward. Set my shocks aside. I'm going to go ahead and take my caster and steering blocks off. I'll remove that hinge pin there. Pull it off, set that aside. Do the other one. Okay, so now I got my 2 mil in. I'm going to pull my shock tower off. Obviously, we don't need this front shock tower anymore since we're going to be replacing it. Now, we take our X-Acto knife. You may find an easier way. I'm just going to pull these E-clips off the hinge pins here. Just like so, like so. And I'll take my 2 mil and just push the hinge pins through. So now we've got our front arms off, and we're left with our bulkhead. So let's get starting to build this thing up with our ProTrac Suspension Kit. Okay, so we'll start with the front shock tower here. And I'm going to go ahead and install the front body mount first. We don't want to forget about that because once it's on the truck, it's really difficult to get to. The same holes will line up as with the stock tower. Okay, so we got our mount on there. Now we're going to go ahead and grab our 2 mil. I think these are a 12 mil screw here, 3x12. Go ahead and get our tower on there. If you're not sure what hardware goes where, the manual has a nice exploded view of everything and how it goes back together, so pretty straightforward. We'll grab our arms. Now here I like to go ahead and get the caster block and spindles on first. So slide this on. So, grab our other one. We're going to go ahead and remove all of our stock turnbuckles from the front end. Make sure on your camber links, the camber link goes from the shock tower to your caster block. Make sure that as you remove the hardware, you put it back on to the new turnbuckle with one small pivot ball and one long pivot ball, one on each end. And go ahead and match it up with your setup sheet to the desired length for the camber. And then also we'll do the same thing for the steering. The steering links have 2 long ends on them here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these. We're going to put them on our turnbuckles that came with the kit according to the length on our setup sheet, and we'll be good to go. Okay, so now that I got my turnbuckles built up, I'm going to go ahead and install my front arms. Now on our arms, they're a little stiffer in the arm itself because it's loose in the bulkhead. You don't want both pieces to be loose, so we've created just a little more of a snug fit on the arms. We'll just slide it in. We got our brace on there. Grab our other side. Grab our hinge pin. They're just snug enough to where you can still push them in with your hand. No problem. We'll go ahead and install our E-clips on the other side. Right, so we got our arms on. We'll take our camber link that's made up. We'll take our camber link specialty screw head. They got the 2.5 mil with the wide head on it. We'll go ahead and slide that into the short ball. For the basic setup, we show you to install it in the center hole. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Put our nut back on. We'll do the same for the other side. Go ahead and put my steering on. Okay, so here's our completed front end. We've got our camber links on. We've got our steering turnbuckles on. We've got our ProTrac arms, our ProTrac front shock tower, and all the components go with it. This we're going to simply reinstall. So. Put our big button heads in. Put my flat heads in on the bottom. Go ahead and install, turn my servo one way, install our steering links. We'll reattach our front bumper. Put our shocks back on, grabbing our stock hardware, making sure we don't forget that little washer behind the shocks. I'm going to go inner on the tower, that's going to be our stock setup. I'm going to go outer on the arm. This is something that you may change depending on the track that you're running on, your driving style, etc. Okay, so there's our front end. As you can see, we're just basically taking off the front end, putting it back on. We've got our nice new tower. We've got our stock shocks. You can upgrade to our new Power Stroke shocks. We wanted to show you that you can, everything's set up for stock. As far as you get the kit and you can run everything else stock besides what comes with the kit. We got a longer ProTrac arms. We've got a longer turnbuckles. We're ready to go, the front end.